Hey guys, welcome back to episode 5 of the introduction to the Legends of Runeterra series. Uh, Instead of going over how to make a control deck, I figured I would combine an element of control and combo, because in some cases you are going to combine control and combo, and they are the two like most difficult to play decks for an average player. So I figured teaching you to build one um, takes a lot of understanding, and they're typically the most difficult. So for a newer player, I typically wouldn't suggest these decks. So I have made 5 decks to examples to go over for you guys. They are different in a lot of cases. They have different play styles and finishing end game uh, goals. But the thing you need to know about control decks is that um, they are reactive. So you aren't playing proactively, as in I'm going to play this to force you to do this kind of scenarios. It's more of you react to what the opponent plays and play your cards accordingly. And you have to be really sure that you use your removal tools and cards on the right targets, because you don't want to just kill a basic, Cithria of Cloudfield at 1 mana 2/2 with a Mystic Shot, because that card most likely is not important to the enemy deck. There's a lot of thinking involved, and that is why control decks are the hardest decks to play for most people, and people have a really hard time um, adapting to the reactive nature. So for control decks, um, you have to always remember to play reactively and then swap to your proactive plays once you start getting into the lead. Um, in, in order to reach like a control nice deck, you need 2 things. One is to draw and cycle through your deck to find the cards right for the situation and to play the cards accordingly, which we went over. So I'm going to go through the 5 control decks that I've made, just examples. I made them really quickly, as you can see here, 28 minutes ago, 23 minutes ago, 19 minutes ago. I've had a basic understanding, and from playing both the preview patches, I've seen these decks work. So we'll start jumping in, and I'll explain to you how to pilot/play these decks and what their goals are. So for the Freljord and Shadow Isles deck, this was the one I was the least familiar with, because I never really played the She Who Wanders deck, but I've seen it a lot, and I attempted to make one to play or to show for you guys. So first of all, we have Braum and Tryndamere. So this is more of a control mid-rangey type of deck. So we went over mid-range in our last video. So Braum, solid stall tool, starts to deny enemy attacks. Tryndamere, solid late game beat 'em down. So once you get to the later stages of the game and you play this, you're going to be playing Tryndamere when you are starting to really push down upon your opponent. Omenhawk, probably one of the best 1-drops in the game, so it's kind of hard not to play. Icefield Archer, 2 mana 3/1, has Frostbite, so that Frostbite is a control mechanic. Frostbite makes the targeted enemy, have 0 power. So if you play Iceveil Archer, you can just make an enemy's attack 0 for a turn. And along with 3 power, it can likely trade off with a few things. So solid tool. Avarosian Sentry, it's draw power. As soon as you can easily block with 2 power and draw you a card for free. Warding Stones, When this card's on the field at the start of a round, you get 1 extra mana. So, not spell mana, you get 1 extra mana in general. So if you have a Warding Stone played on turn 3, when turn 4 starts, you won't have 4 mana, you'll have 5 mana. And it just gives you more freedom to play and get to your later game cards. Along with 4 health, so you can block pretty effectively. And it save you a lot of Nexus damage. Battling Bjerg will draw a unit from your deck with 5 or higher attack. Really solid for drawing She Who Wanders and Tryndamere, which are the only 2 targets in this deck. So this is a I want to draw Tryndamere or She Who Wanders card. Getting your powerful minions in your hand for when the time is right. Scarred Maiden Reaver, 5 mana 4/5, decent stats. Heals to full at the start of every round, and has Overwhelm. So if you attack with this card, it will trample, and if you defend with this card, it will go back to full health at the end of the round. So this is a solid mid-game block everything and attack when you can, as long as you won't die. And it will stick on the board very, very solidly and help you get towards the later stages of the game. She Who Wanders is your late game finisher in most cases. A 10 mana 10/10 is hard to deal with, and when she's played, she obliterates all followers with 4 or less power in play and in hand. So you have to be very careful when playing this, because if your Scar Maiden Reaver did not get buffed by Omen Hawk, it is going to die as well. So that is something to look out for. You'd also want, ideally, to take heart when you with double Brahms on Scar Maiden Reaver. This is one of your more powerful cards, so make sure if you're going to play She Who Wanders and you have a Scar Maiden Reaver, it will just die. So you have to be careful of that. Brittle Steel, good control. Just target a Frostbite enemy with 3 or less health. Just makes their power 0, shuts down their attacks. The box, deal 3 to all enemies with that were summoned this round. So if you're playing against an aggro deck and they play, a 2-drop and 2 1-drops to try to just swarm you and drop your health down, you play the box and they all die. So good control tool here. Avalanche, more good control. Deal 2 to all units. Does deal 2 to your units, so you have to be careful. Grasp of the Undying. Spell, deal 3 to a unit and heal for 3. Vengeance, just straight up kill a unit. And Ruination, kill all units. And this is more of a desperation, or right when you're going to play She Who Wanders or Tryndamere. Just completely wipe the board and then play your big threats and say, hey, go ahead and respond. So this is the first one. This is probably the weakest of the 5 that I'm showing you, because I had never played this, so I just made it off of what I thought would be pretty decent. For our second example, it is a semi-combo deck. So you have Ezreal and you have Karma. So the goal is to get Ezreal leveled up, and ideally, if things go according to plan, you will have a Karma and Ezreal on field, and you just melt the enemy with Karma's Enlightened double spell effect. So we have 2 Eager Apprentices. When played, refill 2 spell mana. We're going to be casting a lot of spells this game. So if you play your spell mana and you have 2 normal mana, and you would pass to store your 2 spell mana, you can instead play Eager Apprentice and essentially play this for free if you're going to pass anyways. Shadow Assassin is an elusive, so it blocks other elusive targets, which is very nice for us in case we're against a elusive enemy. And it is a solid statted 2/2 with a when summoned draw 1, so that's some of our draw. Scaled Snapper can either be a very aggressive card or a very defensive card for 3 mana. It could either be a 5/2 or a 2/5. So as a 5/2, you would try to kill the more beefier attackers / blockers the enemy has, if you don't have removal tools for them. Or as a 2/5, it blocks like a champ in the early game. So this card is very good. Karina Varaza is one of our late game insurance cards. Discard the top 5 cards of your deck and deal 1 to all enemies for each spell discarded. So this could be a full board clear to all enemies if you hit it accordingly. And it also damages the Nexus as well. So this would help clear the board at 9 mana, so you can start playing Karma and Ezreal very safely. Thermogenic Beam, good control card, pretty much can kill whatever your mana's at health-wise. So Rummage, more cycle and draw. Jury Rig can be used with Rummage to give you a free 1/1, and it is also a spell, so it will double when Karma's played. And I think it's really good card in general, so you can surprise 1/1 block because it is a burst spell and can be cast during combat. Mystic Shot, pretty staple in Piltover and Zon decks. 2 mana, deal 2 to anything. Ezreal also gives you Mystic Shots, so this is going to be one of our main kill, poke down enemy cards. 3 Deny, because we're a control deck and Deny is available to us, so we're going to pick it. Get Excited, deal 3 for 3, and discard 1. The discard 1 can be used on Jury Rig as well, or it can be used on a card that you won't have use for at the given moment. So you have to decide what to discard accordingly. Static Shock, deal 1 to 2 enemies and draw 1, so more draw, more targeted effects for Ezreal. Will of Ionia, which is targeted for Ezreal and bounces an enemy back to their hand. So, for example, if it's turn 6 and they play an Avarosian Hearthguard for 5 mana, you could bounce it back to their hand, but in that situation you might not want to do that, because if they play Avarosian again, it buffs their deck by another 1/1/1. But it essentially wastes their mana on a unit that they played on that turn. True Shot Barrage, pretty decent control tool to kill multiple enemies, and gives you 3 targeted effects for Ezreal to level him up. Progress Days to draw more cards, always nice. It is a little costly at 8 mana, but reduces the cost of the cards by 1. We do have a lot of spells here for Karina and for leveling up Ezreal and getting the double effects from Karma. So these 3 are our win conditions, and the rest are either stall or get rid or control cards to kill the enemy minions and units. So that is this deck. Our third example is another Piltover and Zon and Ionian deck, but this one has Heimerdinger instead of Ezreal. So again, Karma at max mana. Before max mana, she gives you a random spell, which is always nice for Heimerdinger. And at 10 mana, she will double cast your spells, which will give you double Heimerdinger turrets. So that is the central point of this deck. 3 Scaled Snapper for the same reason as before. Shadow Assassins for the same reasons as before. We have Mina Swiftfoot instead of Karina, because on turn 9, you just Will of Ionia 3 enemy units. And this card can almost single-handedly make people rage quit. So it's pretty good. Also, very good bounce back into the game in case you were struggling at the later parts of the game. You couldn't remove all the beefy units, so you just kick back 3 units to the enemy hands. So very good. Plaza Guardian to go with our spells here. Reduce my cost by +1 for each spell you've cast this game. And as you can see, we have a lot of spells. We have 23. And it has quick attack. So whenever it attacks, it will hit before the enemy will hit you back. Only on your attacking round, though. So, and it will get a lot cheaper according to the amount of spells we've played. So, pretty solid pickup in this deck. 2 Thermogenic Beams, same reason as before. Basically, kill everything I want. Rummage, same reason as before. Can work with Jury Rig. Jury Rig, same reason as before. Flash of Brilliance is essentially a free play and free Heimerdinger turret, and gives you another random spell that you can use to make more Heimerdinger turrets. It's a burst spell, can't be denied. Create a random spell in hand and refill your spell mana for 3 mana. So if your spell mana was free anyways, you could play this and it will refill your spell mana immediately. So this is a free play card in those situations and gives you Heimerdinger turrets. 3 deny, because it's deny. 3 Will of Ionia to bounce back threats we can't get rid of at the moment. 2 Static Shock for draw and deal 2. 3 mana, 3 copies of the 6 mana Unlicensed Innovation. Summons an Illegal Contraption, which is a 5/5 for 6 mana. And the reason I picked this is because when you play it with Heimerdinger, you will get a 5/5 and a 5/1 with a keyword with Heimerdinger. And also will cast twice with Karma. So for 6 mana, you'll get 2 5/5s and 2 5/1s. So very good in this deck. Progress Day to draw 3 and reduce the cost by 1. And if you play Progress Day with Heimerdinger on the board, you get an 8/8 for 1 mana. So very good. Our fourth deck is a Lux Demacian Ionia Karma deck. So the goal here is to level up Lux and start controlling the board with Lux's Final Sparks, which you get when she levels up. Which a Final Spark is a 0 cost deal 4 overwhelm spell. And with Karma, it will double cast with the overwhelm, and it will be a 0 cost deal 8 damage to a unit, and whatever access damage is dealt to the Nexus. So that is our game plan here. We have 3 Mageseeker Conservators, mostly because I think this card is pretty good. We'll give you a 6+ cost spell, which you can use to get a Final Spark from Lux, and that spell may be double cast with Karma depending on what spell it is. Shadow Assassin for the reasons beforehand, free elusive blocker for other elusive units and makes us draw. Mageseeker Investigator, and this Purify is for personal preference. These cards can be changed if you choose to. Most people will see these cards and think they are not very good, and you may or may not be wrong, but I feel that it's fun to use, so that's what I was going with. Mageseeker Investigator, if you cast a spell this round, remove all text and keywords from an enemy follower. So it is a silence from Hearthstone, and Purify is the same thing, and it can be used on your own follower in combination with Detain to completely remove a unit. We have 3 Vanguard Sergeants. This card could be replaced. I was just struggling trying to think of a card to place in place of it. When I'm summoned, create a 4 Demacian hand, which is a 6 mana spell, give all units +3/+3 this round. So I grabbed it for the 6 mana spell for Lux, free Final Spark, and Scaled Snapper for the same reasons as before. Good aggressive and good defensive, whatever you want at the time. Inside of Ages, 2 mana, create a random spell or create 2 random spells, which we're going for with Lux. Purify, you can silence an enemy minion or your own minion with Detained, so you can just completely get rid of a unit. And you can cast Purify and then Mageseeker Investigator to double silence, because casting Purify will fulfill the condition of playing Mageseeker Investigator. Twin Disciplines to try to either force a trade-off somewhere or protect one of your units. Deny, because it's deny. Steel Tempest, stun an attacking enemy, say, no, I'm not taking that damage. Will of Ionia to bounce. And Detain to get rid of those pesky super big champions or big beefy threats like Tryndamere. So that is the goal of this deck. I had a Lux Karma deck in the preview patches and it was disgusting. The main thing you need to remember for Lux is that when she's leveled up, there's like a hidden counter on her to tell you how much spell mana you've cast. So if we look at Lux here, when I've seen you cast 6+ spells on mana on spells, create a fleeting Final Spark. So if you cast a 6 mana spell, get a Final Spark, and then cast a 2 mana spell, and then end your turn, on the next turn, you would need to cast 4 mana worth of spells to get a Final Spark, even if the round has changed. So there's a lot of mental math involved with Lux in that case. So you can get, I think I had 5 Final Sparks with Karma on field, so that was like 10. it was pretty disgusting. So this Lux Karma situation can be very good. And for our last deck, it is another Lux deck with Ezreal. So Ezreal will give you spells to cast and target on enemies for his level up condition, and Lux will use those spells to gain final sparks, which will then be used to level up Ezreal in return. We have Mage Seeker, Investigator, or Conservator for our aforementioned reason. I think it's pretty good, giving us spells to cast. Eager Apprentice for the same reason as the other decks, free 2 spell mana in some cases. Golden Crush Bot, we can't use Scaled Snapper, so we're using Golden Crush Bot. It is literally the exact same thing, but you don't get to choose to be 5/2 instead. So it's still very good, just not as flexible. Radiant Guardian, when one of our allies dies, we will gain Lifesteal and Tough. Pretty beefy minion, and will lifesteal us back into the game, hopefully. The only issue I see is we have to let one of our things die beforehand, but we have 9 minions below 5 mana, so I think that's okay. 2 Plaza Guardians for the same reason beforehand. I felt 3 might have been a little clunky. 3 Jury Rig for the beforehand mentioned synergies, Rummage and Get Excited. Rummage for Cycle and Draw. Get Excited for removal. Mystic Shot, staple of Piltover and Zon removal. Flash of Brilliance for the Lux combos. So if you cast Flash of Brilliance twice for free, you refill your spell manas, get a Final Spark, and cast Final Spark. There's a big, huge combo you can do with Flash of Brilliance and Lux, which I personally really enjoy. Static Shock for targeted units for Ezreal and free draw. Detain, targeted, and completely erases a unit from existence pretty much for a time. So this could be used to get rid of a Tryndamere or something along those lines. True Shot Barrage for the targeted Ezreal use, and Progress Day for drawing. So these are the 5 control decks that I have just thought up within the last half hour, and was examples of how a control deck would be played, and hopefully I explained pretty decently. So those are the 5 decks I've went over for you guys. I will leave all 5 decks in the description if you'd like to download them and change them according to what you feel is better or anything along those lines. By no means are these decks perfect, but once if I played with one of these, I would have to test and dabble with over time. It's been 2 months since I last played, so some of my thoughts might not be as keen as they once were. I don't remember what my Lex Ezreal deck was final product during the preview patch, but we'll get there. Thanks for watching, and we'll start moving on to more intermediate level content in the future. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later.